Yeah, honestly, that thus far is the most harmful aspect of his presidency. It's the complete ruination of any standard of honesty in political discourse, and it's astonishing to me. I have not yet accepted that this is even possible, much less actual. So I mean, I don't think I'm alone, but I'm continually having the bewildering experience that I just cannot believe this person is president. And it is all focused on this particular aspect of his presidency, where he lies more than any person has ever lied in human history. And not only does he get away with it, his audience seems to, his supporters seem to delight in his just running roughshod over any expectation that a public figure would be honest. It's not a bug, it's a feature for them, and that's really disturbing.
And how do you explain that he does get away with these lies?
Well, it is just to this point where he has enough people who support him for whom the lying is actually not a problem. It's a technique. It's a kind of naked declaration of power, wherein he doesn't have to observe your expectations about what is logical or coherent or responsive to facts. He can just say what he wants because it's the impression he wants to leave with you. He wants a certain language in the air, and he just puts it there. But other than that, all lying is just destructive of the social fabric, even so-called white lies. They undermine trust, they undermine relationships, they destroy reputations. That is in a context where people care about the truth. But what's amazing now is that we seem to be in some kind of free fall with respect to this, and so many people simply do not care if you're caught lying. And Trump has just seems to have rewritten the rules.
The point being, though, is that a lot of people argue whose truth is it, and that's a fair point, isn't it?
Well, but that really isn't so difficult. You know, the truth is what we mean by truth, what we mean by when we say that something is a fact, is that it is true or it is factual regardless of the fact that you are you and I am me. You know, it's not just your truth, it's not just my truth, this is a universalizable quality of reality. I mean, that's what it means to be talking about reality. The thing you're saying isn't merely dependent on who you happen to be. And so we don't have our private physics, and we don't have our private fact-based discussion about anything else, whether it's history or events that are currently going on in the world. I mean, journalism. I mean, this is just our statements about the world have to be held to some common standard of reasonableness. And if when that breaks down, and it breaks down in a spectacular way with someone like Trump, but it's breaking down in the kind of tribalism that goes by the name of identity politics.
How much pause does it give you that Trump has actually built his brand on the back of very robust criticism like yours of the left and liberals?
Well, I think in large measure it's a response to some of the excesses we've seen on the left. I mean, I consider myself liberal more or less across the board. I mean, certainly left of center in any kind of American political discussion. But the identity politics and political correctness we've seen on the left getting more and more amplified over the years has clearly created a backlash, and that backlash is in large measure Trump and his supporters. I mean, we're talking about people who have just had enough with this, and understandably, but the cure is worse than the disease here, and so it's a problem that we have on the left, this resort to identity politics, which is now ushering in a kind of white identity politics in not just in America, in many Western countries. And it's if ever there were an identity politics we don't need, it's white identity politics and white male identity politics, perhaps being the most ridiculous. We need to find some path to a future where our common humanity is the only basis upon which we reason about human flourishing and how to build a global civilization.
Well, then the big question is, how do we come to that middle path, given we seem so divided at the moment?
Well, first I think we have to articulate the goal and not forget it, and then we can see that certain paths are really not paths forward at all. And I think identity politics is clearly the wrong piece of software you want to have running on your hard drive politically. I mean, the end game cannot be that black people and white people really can't reason about the same morality or the same values because their skin color is different, or men and women can't talk about the workplace or sexuality or biological differences between the sexes. I mean, all of this is just so fraught and poisonous and insurmountable that we have to stay balkanized into these separate identities. That can't be the way forward. So clearly we need a way of talking about the most pressing features of human life, whether it's religion or politics or biological differences or wealth and power, or violence. I mean, these are important issues that are not going away, and we need to talk about them in ways that allow for civil conversation, and identity politics is not doing that.
Social media is where civil conversations don't often happen. Do you think social media sites should be punished in some way for disseminating fake news and fake information?
Well, social media is clearly driving us all insane. I mean, this is a psychological experiment that nobody signed up for, and we're all in it. And we each have to curate the contents of our own consciousness a little more carefully than we have been, and rethink our relationship to these platforms. And there's so much wrong with social media. The ad-based model, which subsidizes it, is just selling our attention against the stickiest and most corrosive kinds of memes. So we have to change the incentives. We have to be smarter in our use of these things. And ultimately, I think news organizations and social media platforms should feel more of a burden than they do to get their facts straight. And we have to resist this slide into a false equivalency, because in America now we have people, most of them support Trump, who think that there is an equivalence between something like the New York Times and a website like Breitbart, right? And that comparison is so obscene that it really need not even be criticized. But the problem is that every time the New York Times gets something wrong, it seems to lend credence to the fact that, well, there's really no objective standard of journalism in the first place, so just kind of pick whatever channel of misinformation you like, and the whole world becomes social media, essentially. So it really is, the burden is upon the impeccable news sources to stay impeccable and to really apologize for and correct their errors as quickly as possible. And to some degree, that standard in even the best organs of journalism seems to have eroded, and that's troublesome as well.
You've courted a lot of controversy for your critique of Islam, and do you think at this point in time, though, we've never been further apart, the Muslim world and Western democracies?
Yeah, and that's, it's still a problem. It's a problem that people can forget about for some period of time. And now with ISIS seeming to disperse and certainly lose their terrestrial home, it seems like it's a problem that we can forget about until the next big incident. But the migrant issues in Europe have kept Europe aware of this issue. It's not going away. And what we desperately need is a real spirit of reform and enlightenment in the Muslim world, East and West. I mean, the Muslim communities, wherever they are. And it shouldn't be taboo to say this. It shouldn't be whether you're in the community or outside it. This should just be a general expectation that humanity has for this religion, because it is unlike any other religion on earth at this moment in the degree to which it's breeding radicals who are who really care only about paradise and who are committed to a certain kind of intolerance and fundamentalism that you don't see in other religions.
And you've written extensively, of course, about free will. I mean, when it comes to free will, whether it's Catholicism or whether it's Islam, how much free will is exercised for people with those religions in a mass way?
Well, as you know, I think free will, as most people think of it, is an illusion. I think it's not that people can't be influenced. In fact, the fact that we don't have a radical kind of free will to invent ourselves is of a piece with the claim that we are open to influence at every moment. We're open to better conversations and better arguments and more evidence. And what we need are good ideas to triumph over bad ideas. And this is really the lever that we can get in hand, and which will move more than anything else in our societies.
And do you regret in any way how polarizing this debate has become?
No, because I think it is at no point have I been a mere provocateur or someone who was saying edgy things simply to get an effect. I'm always saying what I think is true.
But sometimes it's taken that way.
Well, yeah, hence the problem of political correctness, and hence the rise of the monster, the orange monster we call Trump. I mean, these two things feed off each other, and there's, the reason Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016 was certainly overdetermined. She was a bad candidate in several ways, but one way she lost was to not speak honestly about this problem.
Sam Harris, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.